Today is November 23rd, 2019, and we're here today with Russell Groves to talk about his time in the military. This is part of the military history program of the MAPS Air Museum. And my name is Debbie Bussinger, and I will be the videographer. What made you decide to go in the military?
Well, it was during the Korean War, and it was drafting guys, and I was 18 years old. And me and my buddy decided if we're going to go to war, I don't want to live in a foxhole or running through a swamp. So I didn't want to jump out of an airplane, so I decided to join the Navy. I could swim like a fish. I thought it'd be a better place for me. So,
and how old were you then?
18.
So that was right out of high school?
Well, yeah, I was inactive at first. We had an 8-year obligation back then. Mine ran from 52 to 60. In 53, I graduated. And every job I got laid off. They shut down, or I couldn't keep a job.
What were the jobs?
Over here at Superior Sheet Steel, they shut down. I had a job at Buckeye Oxygen. Lost that job. I went to Byrd Manufacturing. I told them I was in the Navy Reserves. But that's all right. So they hired me. I was working on the assembly line, and I wanted a week off to go on my duty, my cruise. We can't do that. I said, well, you're supposed to be able to. He said, no, we can't do that. Well, I'll put you down as being laid off. So they laid me off. Everywhere I went, I got laid off. So I was nuts with this. I'm going to go where I don't get laid off. So I asked my recruit officer, when can I get out of here? He said, when do you want to go? I said, tomorrow would be fine. So he said, let me see what I can do. So I left within the week. I went aboard ship Friday night. We sailed for the Mediterranean Monday morning.
And what was that like? What was boot camp like for?
Oh, you got survival and everything goes with it.
People don't know what that means who've never done it. So can you?
You get trained in self-protection, and you could have a swimming test, and you get into a room where they give you a mask.
Like a gas mask?
Yeah, a gas mask. And they put tear gas in the room, and you have to take a sniff of it and put the mask on and all that stuff, learn how to do that. We had fire training. They had a room full of fire. You had to go in and fight the fire. And it goes on and on. We had regular exercises every morning. Went out, they called it the grill, it was a blacktop parking lot, so to speak. Went out there and done your exercises, and all kind of exercises. And they fed you, and we had schooling, different situations and stuff.
How far did you have to swim, or did you have to tread water for a certain amount of time?
Well, we had to jump off of a tower to start with, and that was exciting. Somebody that's scared of height, they had a hard time, but that didn't bother me. Had to make sure you kept your knees together. It could hurt you severely. So anyhow, we went through that. Like if you had to jump off a ship, you knew what to expect.
Right.
And the salt water is hard.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So that's different.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You jump that high, like off the, any ship it's hard on you, but especially a carrier. I never realized that it's so big till I used to run Liberty boats. And I took a couple guys from their ship over. I run up under that Liberty boat. I looked up under that bow, and my stars! I didn't realize it was that big. And then I dumped him off, went back, and went to my ship. And that was one of my duties, was running a Liberty boat.
Did they simulate salt water in your training? So could you tell the difference in the?
Oh yeah.
What was the height?
Oh, probably 40, 50 feet, I suppose. You mean the tower?
Yeah.
I suppose it was 40 feet, I don't know. But somebody never dumped off anything into a pool. That was pretty scary.
Were some of the other recruits afraid?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They would do it, but they didn't like to do it. But they went through it, most of them. I don't think any of them passed out. I've had them pass out in the line where you get the shots. Lots of them passed out there.
Yeah.
That didn't bother me. I take shots like nothing.
Did you get shots in basic training?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it was good at giving shots. Every time I went somewhere, you'd get a shot for one thing or another. And yeah, I was a seagoing boy. We went to Naples, Italy, Barcelona, Spain, Nice, France, Uruguay. I've been to Rio de Janeiro. Ended up in the South Pole. Spent 72 days on the ice with Rear Admiral Byrd.
So what was your first, after you left basic, then where did you go? After you left Chicago?
I went right aboard the Wyandotte.
Oh, you left on the ship from there?
Yeah,
And it was the USS Wyandotte?
right.
Is that what it's called?
AKA 92, named
Okay.
after Wyandotte, Ohio.
Okay. And what kind of a ship was that?
It was a military cargo ship, a troop ship. It had a reinforced bow in it in case of land mines and stuff.
And what defines a troop ship? Are there beds? I mean, what's the...
Oh yeah, they got all kind of bunk rooms, and we hauled cargo, different cargo. We even had loaded dozers and stuff to go down to the South Pole. Tons and tons of stuff. Well, there's some pictures in that book you can look at. But yeah, we hauled quite a bit of cargo. It was 500 feet long, and I don't know the exact measurements.
And how many crew members were on a ship like that?
Regular, about 300, and we hauled 300 CBs down there.
What's a CB?
It's a battalion, military battalion of guys. They build stuff,
Oh, okay.
bridges and dams and whatever.
Okay.
They're a building bunch of people. They do it, anything you want.
And what was your job on the ship?
I done several things. Deckhand mainly was but I run winches and booms and cranes and liberty boats, captain's gigs, 40-foot motor launch, LCM where the front drops out, military when the Marines would go aboard shore, the front drops down for a ramp and they just run out of it. I run those. Anything aboard ship. I had spliced cable, a spliced rope, washed down the decks. We'd leave port, it would go into port. A lot of times you'd have to stop out in the bay and wash your ship down to go in. When you come out, you'd wash it down again. But Naples, Italy was about the dirtiest shipyard I ever went to. The dock. Had cans floating around, garbage. Nice, France was the cleanest, pretty blue water. Everything was spotless. But they're always a little different.
When you left Chicago, that was your first kind of tour?
Yeah.
And where did you go from Chicago to?
I went to Norfolk, Virginia. We operated out of Norfolk mainly. While I was before I went into regular, I was on a minesweeper. That was one of my summer duties.
Okay, and what happened there? What was that like?
They just took a cruise, showed you how it worked, and just general information of Navy, what style or whatever you want to call it, basic learning. But it was, you always had to, I think we took a yearly cruise, but that was the first one I took, and I went right into the.
So a cruise, by what you say by a cruise, I mean you kind of were deployed on a ship for a certain amount of time.
Right.
And came back, and that was mainly an educational
Right. Part of the
thing
training.
for you?
Yeah.
And you were looking for mines?
That was the duty of that boat, ship, yeah, was minesweeper.
And how do you do that? What's the,
Oh,
how do they find a mine?
I suppose radar, I don't know. Back then, I wasn't too interested in looking for mines. At this one, I got assigned to.
Okay.
You know, when I went from that to the Wyandotte, And before I was supposed to get out, I put in for a transfer to whatever, another ship, another duty. They put me aboard an ammunition ship. Uh, we had to go back to Red Bank, New Jersey, where we just going to unload it, decommission it or whatever. We went up there, and from there, I went aboard the Vulcan. It was a tender, a repair ship. That's where I finished up, was on the Vulcan down in Virginia. And I was discharged, or got out, in 57. And I got my discharge in 60.
So the tour you did on the tender, what did that entail? What did you have to do? You
Just regular deck routine stuff. I didn't do much of anything. And I had a guy, called him Hillbilly, from Kentucky. He stood watches for me. We got married during that time. Well, when I was going to get married, we was going to get married the 10th of June. And I was home on leave. And we wanted to get married. I wanted to get an extension. I called in and said, "You report back on as ordered." So we had to put our wedding off for a week. But anyhow, the reason for that was Castro stuck his ugly head up and said, "I'm going to turn the water off in Guantanamo Bay." They said, "No, you're not." So I left from there and went to Cuba, my home. I went down to Virginia, got aboard ship, and went to Cuba. Meantime, she's waiting for me to come back to get married.
Oh.
But anyhow, we got back from Cuba. We got married, and I wound up back in Cuba again a while later. And he said he threatened to shut that water off again. And they told him, "You better look out in the bay." 7th Fleet was sitting out there. So he changed his mind. But he thought he's
part of the 7th Fleet?
Yeah.
And what were you on?
I was on the Wyandotte then. Yeah, had some. Our biggest gun was a 5-inch. We had 20 calibers and 50s, but the biggest one was a 5-inch. That's what I was trained for in Charleston, South Carolina, the gunnery school down there.
And when you had that job, what did you have to do with that gun?
Load it. Then we had a guy that would pull the trigger. That was back before all this computer stuff. Just crank the thing by hand, and turn it, all that stuff.
Now, did that take 2 people, one to turn it and one to lift it, or?
There was 4 or 5 of us aboard there.
Okay.
We had what do you call him? The captain or the chief. He's the one that called the shots. Usually we had floating targets, and we had air targets that pull the sleeve. And he would be the one to tell you when to fire the gun, whatever it was. And on the ones that was floaters, he'd shoot a projectile beyond it, the one before it, and then the 3rd round was the one that would destroy whatever was there. Interesting. But yeah, we had a good time with it.
And so you had a person who did lifted the gun up and down, turned it.
Oh yeah.
Someone who loaded it.
Yeah.
And then someone who
turned it this way and that way. There was about 5 of us, I think. I don't remember just exactly how many.
And what was your position in that again?
I was the guy that put the projectile in and closed the breech.
Okay.
I'd get it out of an elevator from below me, come up the shaft, and I'd get it and put it in, pull the lever, and the breech would go shut. Then when he'd say fire, somebody would push the button.
Could you feel it? Was there recoil when it shot? Did it shake?
Oh yeah. I didn't have my helmet snapped one day, and I took the helmet, threw the helmet right off my head.
How about earplugs? Was it loud?
Oh, you had your helmet on stuff. Yeah, it was loud. You better believe it. Not like they are today. When I got out there, I think 17-inch. That's a big shell. Of course, the 5-inch was all one casing. Those big ones, they got the powders in a pack You throw that in there. Projectiles they're separate objects. Put the projectile in, put the powder in, and it's totally different nowadays, I suppose, even now. I don't even know if they might not even touch it, just push a button.
What was a normal day?
Like office work, 9 to 5. Reveille was at 8. You had breakfast from 8 to 9. Then you went to work, whether it was painting or chipping or whatever. Just a regular work day when you was out at sea. Then you had watches, usually a 4-hour watch, whether it be morning, noon, or night. You had to report for your watch. It could be anywhere on the fantail, up on the quarterdeck, wherever. Up in the crow's nest, that was interesting, especially when it was during a storm. It's going all kind of ways up there, just kind of going with a breeze. That was about 40, 50 feet off the deck. You had to go up a steel ladder. Of course, the back of it had rungs where it was closed, more or less. Keep you from falling off backwards. That would be a nasty bump.
Did you hit any bad storms?
Well, we went around the Roaring 40. That's south down to Boot,
Of Italy?
South America.
South
Oh,
America.
South America.
Yeah, they call it the Roaring 40s. Your ship goes 45 degrees this way and that way. You couldn't, you had stainless steel tables. You had stainless steel trays. You couldn't even go to the chow line because it'd fly right off of that table, slide right down off the other end. So we'd get a bowl of soup and sit down somewhere and drink our soup. It was, a lot of guys got sick on there, even the officers. That was rough. But that was part of one of my tours
Did you just go there one time?
around one time.
Operation Deep Freeze.
We went down there, we crossed the Equator. I crossed that twice. We went from Pollywog to, well, that was a initiation.
Yeah, they had a ceremony for you?
Oh, yeah, all day long.
Can you share that? Is it
From Pollywog to Shellback. Yeah, I was pretty big and I was pretty ornery. Well, they had one of the things there, but in the middle of the ship, on the top of the hold, so to speak, they had covers that went on there, metal. Well, beside that, they built a pool. And they built a chair there that had hinges on the back. You had to go up and you had to sit in that pool, in a chair. They'd say, "You a Pollywog or Shellback?" And I thought, "Oh." I went along with him. I told him I was a Pollywog.
and define polybog? Tell people what a polybog is.
Somebody never crossed it before. The Shellback was after you crossed it, and you was the one that done the initiation part. So I just wanted to see what they would do. They had 2 guys in the tank, in the pool. And if you didn't say what they wanted you to say, they'd dump you over backward, and you'd dump you right in that pool. So, okay, we'll see about that. I was still in good shape after playing football and stuff. Okay, so they dumped me in the pool. I come up, and the guy asked me a question, and I disagreed with him. He dumped me. Well, I pulled him under with me. So I come up, and the other guy decided he'd help his buddy, so he grabbed a hold of me, and I took both of them down. We had a big time. And then another one of them was, they had a guy they had a canvas chute, like it was a round canvas frame. It was probably as long as this room. You had to crawl through that, and they had it full of garbage. While you was crawling through that, they had pieces of canvas was not this big around and so long, about a foot long, that they would smack you with, boot you. Come out the other side, you had to go over, and the chief was sitting there, our deck chief, with a baby diaper on, and a goofy hat, like a baby's hat. And he had his belly, didn't have any shirt on, had his belly covered with ketchup and mustard and relish and all this stuff. You go over to him, and he'd ask you a question and whatever, and he'd grab you by the back of the head and put your face right on that slop. You come out of there, and they had a guy, had like, it was on the operating table, had a guy dressed like a doctor. He was going to operate on you. Oh, it just, the whole day of fun, really. But anyhow, that was exciting. That's quite a ceremony. And then coming back, of course, you do the same thing, but you was on the other side of you was the Shellback then. But it lasted all day. Had a good time. We've
Tell her
been
about your 32 days down on the ice.
72 days.
Oh, it was 72 days? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so did you volunteer for that tour or that?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the ship, I was only going to take it, and I didn't turn it down. Yeah, I ran small boats. When I went down there, of course, back then they used semaphore and all that stuff, which was part of the training.
What is
Basic
that?
light, SOS by light, talk by light, alphabet all by light. I knew that, and I ran small boats, so when we got down there, they was going to move one ship from one place to another. They would send me out with 4 or 5 guys, and they would make a dock for the ship. They said we'd be burying dead men, which was a railroad tie. You dig a hole in the ice, put the railroad tie in there, and pull fresh water around it. It would set up hard as cement. I'd take a crew out and we'd do that, come back to the ship, and if they needed something else, why, I got to see a lot of first-hand killer whales. I didn't
So
want.
what were the transport ships you were taking the men out
Yeah,
to do the physical work to build the docks?
yeah.
And what kind of ship was that?
That was an LCM. It was a small, like the Marines land when they go in for a landing.
And so it was open.
The front end would open and drop down. Well, I didn't do that with them. We just did get crawl over the side walls and stuff and get out. Well, I done that.
Was it icy?
Oh, it was solid ice down there.
But how did you?
Well, we had a icebreaker, which is a ship. It'd break the ice for us. And I would go in and would put those to build so the other ship could come in and tie up. We done that. And I got to meet some penguins firsthand and grab you by the pant leg and shake it like I was trying to get your attention. And I seen some killer whales up very close in that boat. I didn't know whether to shut it down or, but I did turn it off. They're kind of nosy too, like the penguins. They kind of look by, but when they'd go into the ice, it just sounded like thunder. It would rumble and it'd scratch their back on the ice. And you'd see big cliffs, like high-rise buildings around here. That ice break loose and fall and disappear and go down. Interesting. But I spent 3 days in the sick bay for exhaustion. One night I couldn't sleep. I'd go up and work up on deck, doing stuff, different things. And I just overdone it and didn't get enough rest, and I got sick, high fever. I got this 3 days rest in sick bay. But anyhow, that was different.
What was the temperature?
Oh, about 40 below. We lost one guy down there, a guy on a D9 dozer. Got some big pictures in the book. Matthews, I think, is his last name. He was doing a job and the ice gave way and him and dozer and all went down. Always except for found it was his hat. His hat floated up. So we lost one up in New Jersey loading up too. It wasn't one of ours. I think he was one of the guys up there. Those ships got some of them we had. I think our ship had 4 different decks deep down. And the guy stepped over to the ladder to get on the ladder to go down, and his foot slipped somehow, and he went backwards. He's just down 4 decks, splashed. That was the end of him.
Tell her about Scott's base down there on the ice.
Oh, well, I done quite a bit of roaming around down there on the ice. I'd drop them guys off, and I'd go snooping, They had rocks and stuff. I went over and here this shack was over there where Scott had been down there like in 1935 or something. And that building was about as big as this room. Maybe not quite that big. Where he had his lab. There's test tubes in there, and outside of that building was they called it a garbage
Food dump.
food bank or something, where he had food dumped there. There's no rust down there. Those cans was like brand new. The nails in the side of the shack was brand new, looked like brand new. There's no humidity. It don't get cold enough to cause anything to decay. Like in a freezer, same difference.
What was your first impression of the South Pole when you got there?
It wasn't much. There's nothing to see. I suppose the penguins, you can be looking at an ice shelf, what might be 6 feet off the water, high ice shelf, solid ice. You can be looking at that. You can turn away and look at something over here and look back, and there'll be 500 penguins standing there. Where'd they come from? Here them rascals, they go down real deep and then they come straight up and they land on that ice shelf on their feet. Just out of the clear. It's amazing how them animals get around. They can't run too fast standing up, so when they lay down and lay on their chest, they use them fat back feet for paddles. Well, they can go. It's unreal. We'd chase them little rascals. And then some of them, they call them what do they call them? The big penguins, Phyllis, what do they call them?
Emperor.
Emperor penguins. They're about 5 feet high. And to see them far off, you think of the man standing there with a tuxedo on. Got that white chest on him. And they get about 5 feet high. There's several different breeds of them, but that is amazing. They're nosy like any other animal. They're curious, Something else. We did get a penguin for a mascot. He kept him around for a week or so, and then I guess they turned him loose. It's quite interesting.
Were they used to seeing people? The penguins?
No, there's nobody down there.
How many people were down there when you went?
From all 3 ships, I couldn't tell you. We took 300 CVs, so that was our main cargo. Well, it wasn't our main cargo, but we took a lot of equipment down there. Dozers and these little, like the bobcats they got around here, they call them weasels down there. It was the little same type of thing, but had tracks on them. We took several of them down there and all kind of food, beer. A couple of the guys got into one of the holes down there, and holes had covers on them, lids. And of course, it had a padlock on the one that had the beer down in the hole. But they unscrewed the nut off of the back with the hinge and lifted it up backwards. They come up a little bit of beer short. Anyhow, we took a lot of food down for them, and building materials of all kinds. Quite interesting.
So you were going to a base that was down there.
We was building the base.
Oh, you were building the base.
Yeah. I think the main reason, truthfully, that they wouldn't tell you was they was building so they could watch Russia. We're 7 miles from Russia, across the Bering Sea. But they supposedly was for scientific research. They're still down there, I guess, as far as I know.
And what's the base?
I don't know what they called it. I have no idea.
Did you meet Admiral Byrd?
Yeah. Yeah, he'd come up on deck. When you'd have the watch up on deck, he's had one on the port side and starboard side, standing out there on the wing, so to speak, on both sides. He'd come out and talk to you, and he'd look through his binoculars, and they had things that they'd look at the sun and the moon, and they'd look through there at that and make notes. Did all kind of different things. Yeah, he was tall and skinny. There's a picture of him in that book too. Yeah, very interesting. Not too many people got that opportunity.
Do you feel like it changed you?
Oh, drastically. Yeah. I think it was the best thing that happened to me. And mainly the reason I went was I was discouraged because I got laid off all them places and stuff. I'm nuts with them. I'll just go to the Navy. So I did. I never regretted it. But it was good training, discipline. You done what you was told, or you got corrected.
Did you ever get corrected?
No, I didn't. I didn't have any problem with that. But yeah, I hauled a lot of guys back to the ship that did. They get in trouble, get drunk and stuff and mess up. They'd come down to the dock to get back to the ship with the MPs hanging on to them. They came back to his ship. Some of them they took right off the dock, escorted them downtown in the back of a van, threw them in the rig. Yeah, it was exciting.
Yeah. Do you feel like you had adequate training? Were you prepared?
I did. We had some very good teachers. In fact, our chief that was over us in the boot camp, we all chipped in together and bought him a watch. And the old boy cried. He didn't know what to think of that. But he was very strict. Yeah, we bought him a watch. Yeah, I think it would be a good job for a good deal for kids to learn respect and discipline. And I think it makes a better guy out of you.